This is what an average police officer looks like in Korea.
I'm not a cop, but I do love my donuts.
I'll try to make this as short as possible, but it's a good story.
Today we're gonna find out if you can be an effective police officer if you're not physically fit. All right, Greg, so you were a police officer for many years, and I just stumbled upon this video where they claim that the most fit police officers are in South Korea. Let's check it out, and I want to get your thoughts on this.
This is what an average police officer looks like in Korea. The reason they're all so fit is because they believe that good physical fitness is key for their daily work. They're also a part of the fittest police department in the world, and their district has had the lowest crime rate in the country for 4 years straight. So, do you think this is a coincidence?
Greg, what are your thoughts?
Personally, I think, I suspect this video may just be some type of a propaganda thing. One of the things that I think is a giveaway when they're kind of panning across the lineup of the cops, one of the females, her jacket sleeves are like sticking beyond her fingers out like this far. So I wonder how real this is. That's my thoughts of this video. I don't know. I have some friends that were stationed in South Korea. I'll ask them, if this is accurate description of the average cop. I just doubt that it is, but it would be nice if all police officers look this healthy. I'll say that.
Well, let's circle back to the beginning of the video. Can a cop be effective at his job or her job if they're not physically fit?
Yes and no. I mean, remember, police work is very multifaceted. There's a lot of the job, gets mundane, and there's a lot of paperwork involved. And the majority of your day isn't spent, in foot pursuits, wrestling with suspects on the ground. The majority of your day, on an average day, is going to be taking, stale crime reports, maybe doing some traffic enforcement, things like that, where physical fitness isn't that, I don't want to say important, but it doesn't play a huge factor in successfully doing your job. Now, where physical fitness comes into play are those situations where maybe you are fighting for your life, or you're in a foot pursuit chasing, a criminal through neighborhoods. That's where I think it really would behoove an officer to become healthy. And not only that, but when you're fit, you're going to be a lot more alert. Your self-esteem is going to be higher, so you're going to carry yourself with more confidence. And there's a term we use in police work, command presence. And so, if you're walking up and your uniform is very well fitted and you're obviously in good shape, you're going to command more respect from pretty much everybody, I think, but especially where it's important is someone who may be contemplating doing harm to you. That person they're evaluating you. And if they feel like this may not end out, that well for me, if I decide to fight this person, a lot of times they'll decide just to comply. So that's, I think, where physical fitness comes in, and longevity of career. I mean, police work is a very stressful job. You're at an elevated state of alertness throughout the entire shift. I mean, you may be at a restaurant just eating your lunch or dinner or whatever, and you're constantly kind of surveying, watching people that are coming in because you're evaluating threats. So your stress levels elevated throughout the day. So, keeping yourself, with cardiovascular health, I think leads to a longer career and a longer retirement, after you're done doing police work. Maybe around a little bit longer than somebody who didn't take care of themselves.
And when you're talking about physical fitness, where should a young cadet who's thinking of becoming a cop focus their time and training on? Should it be more cardiovascular or more weight training or you know, could there be certain drawbacks of training a certain way? Like, do you want to train like a bodybuilder, like a power lifter, more of the CrossFit? What do you think is more effective for a police officer?
Well, I know now it's very, very CrossFit oriented. I'm speaking of San Diego PD. When I went through the academy, it was like an anaerobic type exercises we were doing. I went into the academy, I was very much a weightlifter. So I was a lot bigger than I am now, muscular wise. And it was a slap of reality, all the cardio we were doing. And I lost a lot of weight. Again, I wasn't heavy. It wasn't fat weight. I slimmed down just because of all the, we were running like crazy every day. And all of the, at least most, we did do some weightlifting, but for the most part, it was just nonstop burpees and mountain climbers and, running with weights in our hands and everything like that. So I would guess nowadays, CrossFit would be the way to go. It kind of covers everything.
Okay. And would you say an officer that's physically fit is less likely to use their firearm in a physical altercation?
Yeah, I mean, if they're more capable, I would say yes. Especially, it's not just physical fitness, but also having some, grappling skills, some fighting skills. You'll, I guess, be less apt to get yourself into a situation where you would have to resort to a firearm. So, yeah, I guess yes.
So I'm just curious, like when you were with San Diego PD, you said you were doing burpees, running, and all that. Were there certain benchmarks you had to like achieve? Like, did you have to do so many miles within a certain time frame, so many burpees, bench press a certain amount of weight, or pull yourself up a rope or things like that?
Well, we did all that in our training, including rope climbing. But what they were using to test our physical fitness was we had a pretty extensive obstacle course that we had to run within a certain time. And the obstacle course, I mean, it had ropes you climbed, it had walls we had to clear, we had to jump over. I mean, the lowest wall was a 4-foot wall. The highest one was an 8 or 10-foot wall that we had to climb over. Again, we started off the course, we had to run down this huge flight of stairs, then turn around and run back up the stairs. And that's when all the other things, climbing ladders, climbing ropes, scaling walls. We had a dummy drag, which was I think 150-pound dummy that was just lifeless, so we had to pick that up and drag it so many feet. And then they had what they called a handcuffing apparatus, which was this thing, but it had fake arms that were connected with these really heavy-duty springs. And we had to bring the hands behind the back and hold it for a certain amount of time. And then that's where the test ended right there.
Over the years, you've answered several calls. Was there ever a situation where you had to come in and help another officer that wasn't, in the best shape of their life? And did you actually saw what happens to an officer that is not physically capable of restraining someone?
Yes, that's happened. Fortunately, like my squad, we were all pretty fit. So, I mean, I was, you felt proud of your whole squad when everybody looked good physically. But yeah, there were situations where either somebody was just not in the best of shape and they were winded, or their stature wasn't to where they could, restrain a much bigger person, if that makes any sense. They weren't as strong, weren't as big. But that always isn't, because of physical fitness. I mean, if you're trying to, physically control someone who's 6'8", 300 pounds, it's difficult. It doesn't matter really how strong you are. But yeah, I've had situations where, we get to a scene and somebody who wasn't really the example of physical fitness was struggling to take care of what they were trying to take care of.
So for San Diego PD and most police departments, is, how do I say, passing your physical fitness, once you get into the department, are there requirements for police officers to maintain a certain level of fitness? Or once you're in and you can like let your fitness, just slide?
Well, here's the sad thing. So when I came on the department from the academy, then you go through phase training. So you're still in training, but riding with training officers out in the field for a few months. After that, then you're a level 1 police officer. And for that, you're on probation for a year. And for that entire year, every month, we had to go back to the academy and do that physical agility test that I was describing earlier. And if you did not pass that physical agility test within the accepted time, you were pulled out of the field, and then you were basically going back to the academy, and there was one of the physical fitness trainers would be working with you, trying to get you up to par to where you could pass that test again. And if you failed the second time, you lost your job. You were done. A lot of times those officers that did not pass, they would offer them a job as, like, say, a dispatcher or a community service officer, something like that. Then one day there was an officer, and she was struggling with the wall. She couldn't climb over the wall. So pulled out of the field, they worked with her, and again, she failed. So basically they told her, you're done with being a police officer, offered another position. And she actually sued the city under ADA, the American Disabilities Act, and she won that lawsuit. So
how could she win if there's a standard that she couldn't meet?
She basically, their argument was that it was discriminatory because she didn't have the ability to do the task. And I agree with what you're saying. I think there needs to be set standards for firefighters and police officers, because the job can get very, very physical, very, very fast, and lives depend on it. Not only other fellow officers, your life, but the lives of people that you're trying to help. I think there needs to be standards set, but because of that lawsuit that she won, they removed that standard as far as having to, pass this test for that first year of probation. And in addition to that, after you're off probation, we still had to go through an annual, they called it a PAT test, a physical agility test. And they were, measuring your fat percentage. And we had to do X amount of push-ups, X amount of sit-ups. And then I think it was like a 2-mile run or something like that. And all that went out the door with that lawsuit. So unfortunately now it's up to the officers, if they want to maintain that standard. I know the mindset at my department still seems I think people see the importance of the physical fitness and the culture with San Diego PD. Most of the officers are doing something to take care of themselves and to stay fit. But boy, I've been to other states where as a police officer, you feel a little embarrassed, when you see the way people present themselves in a uniform. But it is what it is.
That's a wild story, because I know I could never make the NFL, but maybe I should try and sue them for not letting me be part of the NFL. Exactly.
And it just seems, again, for law enforcement, it just seems so critical. If you have somebody who failed the physical agility test because they couldn't get over a wall. So now picture yourself as a police officer in a foot pursuit, and that's your cover officer. The suspect goes over a wall, you go after the suspect. Now you're fighting with the suspect on the other side of the wall, and here's this person that can't climb the wall on the other side. And this is where, it gets real. And we all had, there was always, seemed like an officer on the shift that we knew if the shit went down bad, that they weren't going to be real capable of helping. And I know, like, if I heard one of my buddies on my squad getting a call that sounded really ugly, and the cover officer, I felt maybe wasn't that capable, I'd always try to clear whatever I was doing so I could go help them out, be the cover officer.
Well, can you share some stories with us about where there was a situation where you actually had to deal with someone who was substantially bigger than you? And when I say bigger, I don't mean big and fat, I mean big and muscular. And how did you deal with the situation?
So one comes to mind very quickly whenever I'm asked a question like that. And I'll try to make this as short as possible, but it's a good story. So I'm at work and this call comes out, and it's a male standing on the corner. If you look at the map of San Diego, it's at the corner of Midway Drive and Rosecrans. And so it's a pretty busy street. So he's standing on the corner and he's got a crowbar, and cars are making the turn and he's kicking the cars. He hit the windshield of a Mustang, like a really nice Mustang. He's just raging. So a lot of calls are coming in. And anyway, so I'm responding to this call. It's myself and another officer responding to this call. And traffic, I'm coming down Midway Drive, and traffic was really heavy. So I'm fighting traffic getting there. And then I see this group of people standing around this Mustang that's parked in this parking lot, and they're all flagging me down. So I pull in there, and they're all saying, be careful, he's crazy, where is he? And they're pointing, and I see this man sitting down on the curb by this bus stop. And so if you can imagine, his back's towards me, and he's sitting there facing the street, not doing anything, but he looked pretty big. And so I get on the radio and I said, hey, I'm on scene. I'll be standing back until cover arrives. My cover was stuck in traffic. And so I'm standing there just kind of waiting. And then all of a sudden the guy stands up, turns around, and he sees me, right? And so he goes, San Diego police, I'm going to cuss here, I'm going to fucking kick your ass. So I pulled out my pepper spray. He wasn't armed, by the way. He didn't have the crowbar. The crowbar was on the sidewalk, but he didn't pick it up. So I'm standing there kind of bladed out with my stance, and I've got my pepper spray, and he's coming closer. Then I raise it up, spray him right in the face, and he drops, his head like this, covering his eyes, and then he looks up, and it looked just like The Shining, that The Shining looking through the wall, and he goes, I see you, like that. And I'm like, fuck. And he was tall, like much taller than me. I'm 5'10", and he was probably, and I'm not exaggerating, probably 6'5". He was a big guy. And I pulled him around, and I managed to get my arm around his neck, and we were allowed to use what we called the carotid restraint. Some people refer to it as a chokehold, but we call it a carotid restraint. And I got him into that carotid restraint and applied some pressure, and it was instantaneous. We just dropped. Both of us dropped down to the ground, and I managed to hook him up really fast with handcuffs. And it was funny because across the street from where this happened, so I'm on the north side of Midway. On the south side, there was a big Jeep dealership, and all of the dealers that were out there in the lot, they were all clapping, because some of these guys were the folks that called. I think that's for me personally, because again, and it was a one-on-one thing, and I was fit, that my level of fitness saved my life. That there's no doubt about it. And that guy, when we went to court on this guy, I remember he was sitting at the on the defense table, and he was shackled up around his waist, which is very rare. Normally the defendant's not even handcuffed in a trial, and this was the preliminary trial. And I remember I was testifying and they wanted me to draw a diagram on this dry erase board about what, where we were, the positions and everything. And I talked about the pepper spray, and he stands up and he goes, "That's because I ate that fucking shit for breakfast." And the deputies pounced on him. I mean, he was just a psychotic, dangerous individual. And so, yeah, that's, like I said, I kept myself very fit, and I was doing martial arts and everything too on the side. So I think all of that came together, and really it impressed on me the importance of staying fit. And I tried to stay as fit as I could throughout my career. So I'm 60 now. I don't think I look that bad for a 60-year-old guy.
Oh, you look great, man. But so circling back to that story, he didn't have the crowbar in his hand, right? And he's coming at you. Legally speaking, if he's coming at you, would you have been allowed to tase him or use your firearm on him? And was it you who showed restraint by using the pepper spray?
Yeah, I just felt like the pepper spray, because my plan was to pepper spray him and then take him down. You know what I mean? Because it's easier to fight like a guy like that when they can't see and they're having respiratory issues, because normally pepper spray really messes people up, but there are exceptions. There are people where it doesn't affect them that much. And this was one of those guys. But because again, I had a plan, and which is good. I think is something else that's very important when you're going into a situation like this. Have a plan. And I was waiting for my cover, but I was planning, what am I going to do if he comes at me? And yeah, if he had the crowbar, it would have been a different situation. If he was closing in on me quickly with a crowbar, I think I probably would have went to my gun instead of the pepper spray.
And how far does the pepper spray shoot?
The cans, I want to say it's like 15 feet. But we used to have a standard that they dropped this as well. So the military, like say an edged weapon, the military, they train someone with an edged weapon, a knife or what have you, is a threat at 30 feet. Because even after they're shot, there's a lot of accounts of police officers that have been killed basically by a dead person. So, someone coming at them with an edged weapon, they shoot them, but they're not completely dead until after they stab the cop. And a crowbar is a very deadly weapon. I mean, it's a very deadly weapon. So I wouldn't have felt comfortable with the limited range. Again, 15 feet if you're lucky with a can of pepper spray. So I would have went for my gun, and hopefully he would have stopped. But this guy, I mean, he was scary. Like I said, Jack Nicholson in The Shining. That's what he reminded me of when he looked up.
So imagine you had a magic wand and you could manage everyone's fitness when it comes to being a police officer. What would be your main criterias for an officer on the beat? Like, give me a little checklist that, whether it's speed, how high you have to jump, bench press. Just give me the things you think a police officer needs to be able to do physically to be out there on the field.
Well, I don't think your average officer needs to be, like Lou Ferrigno, all jacked. Again, I think that CrossFit kind of, that core strength is very important. Cardio is very important. And yeah, that upper body strength. Again, you don't need to be bench pressing 400 pounds, but you need some upper body strength. We do a lot of climbing, and believe it or not, at least I did. I did a lot of climbing up. I even climbed a tree one time to get it. It was a burglary alarm at a residential burglary alarm, and it was a 2-story house. And we noticed a window upstairs. No one was home, and so we wanted to check the house, And my partner and I climbed a tree, jumped onto the roof from the tree. And I was like probably when we did this, I'm guessing, 29 years old. But there was a lot of officers who wouldn't have done that, climbed a tree to get into a house. But just that overall a nice balanced fitness, cardio, and then again, that core strength and good upper body strength. You don't have to be all buffed out. And being too bulky can be a hindrance sometimes.
I can imagine. So this might sound a little bit controversial, but do you think there should be a minimum height requirement to be a cop?
There used to be.
Okay. What was it?
There used to be. Well, with San Diego, I think it was 5'9", maybe.
Okay. Because I'm thinking if you need to like jump and pull yourself over a wall, like obviously height helps you climb over a wall, right?
Yes, you're right. This is getting into some controversial grounds. I've worked with some pretty short officers who are very, very capable officers, very fit, very healthy, and they could do anything I was doing. And I felt very safe working around these folks. That being said, again, just from the command presence aspect, and this is, again, controversial, but I'm just saying my personal feeling, when I was rolling on a call and my cover officer was like 5'1", weighing in at like 110, I wouldn't feel real comfortable,
Mm-hmm. Well, I used to work in the nightclubs, right? And I'll never forget, I was just standing outside talking to some buddies, waiting, trying to get them into the club. And I saw a little scuffle happening outside. And these group of hooligans, they actually stole the officer's, what do you call it? The walkie-talkie. They ripped it off her and they started running down the street, and she was there with her stick and they were just laughing at her. So like, I felt bad, because she was trying to like control, but like the hooligans around her, they didn't take her seriously, bunch of drunk guys. So I could see how like, what do you call it? Command presence is important, because as a civilian, watching, like these guys, they didn't take her serious, and the guy took her walkie-talkie and he bolted down the street downtown, and she couldn't keep up. He was gone, so.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories like that. And again, I always, as a former police officer, when I go someplace and I see someone who's not taking care of themselves, there's always a little bit of embarrassment, because I know that there's a lot of people that they just don't like cops. They hate cops. There's a lot of people out there that don't like cops, and it feeds into the stereotype that they want to believe that all cops are, hanging out at donut shops all night eating donuts, and it's really not true.
I'm not a cop, but I do love my donuts.
Yeah, I'll have an occasional donut. So when I was a cop, I would never go to it. It's funny, the whole reason that came about, I think, is, back in the day, there weren't places that were open 24 hours like they are now. And I think only donut shops were open. It's funny, when I was in that area that I'm talking about, that Midway Rosecrans area, there was a donut shop there. And back when there was a naval training center on Rosecrans, we had a huge problem with prostitution in that area. And all the pimps hung out at the donut shop. It wasn't cops, it was pimps. I mean, and I'm talking like stereotyped pimps that you would see on TV shows, with the feathers and really gaudy clothing and everything. But there weren't cops there. It was all these pimps hanging out.
I was just thinking about like command presence. Like, I've seen some videos where cops pull over women, right? But then later on, it always seems like a female officer shows up to the scene. Do you feel like when a male cop is trying to deal with a female suspect, that it's better to have a female cop talk to her and, you know, frisk her and try to like contain the situation? Because in a lot of these body cam videos, there seems to be a lot of hostility on the woman's side towards the cop, right, the suspect. But when a female cop comes, it kind of like, they kind of like tend to relax. At least that's what I saw from the body cam footage. Can you talk a little bit about what you experienced over the years?
Yeah, and I will say too, you know, I've worked with some extremely capable female officers that were very physically able. So I don't want to feed into like a stereotype with the female cops. But yeah, that's a thing. There's a lot of female suspects that just don't feel comfortable dealing with men. There's a lot of female victims that don't feel comfortable dealing with men. Definitely when it's time to, you know, when you're making an arrest and you need to do a pat down, we would always want to get a female cop on scene to do the pat down, because we were pretty limited in what we, and I don't know if things have changed, but like we could pat down a female, but we had to like use the back of our hand, you know. There's places where female suspects will secrete stuff, contraband, that you need to get a little bit more into it, like a little bit more grabby, I guess, to find. And it wouldn't be very wise for a male to do that. You know, you're opening the doors for a lot of problems. Also, children, a lot of times, like say if you're dealing with a victim who's a child, a lot of times they'll feel a lot more comfortable with a female.
Well, Greg, as always, thank you for your insight. And for those of you who are new to the channel, please subscribe and check out these other great videos.